The conference room at Fort Bragg smelled of strong coffee and nervous ambition. Morning sunlight streamed through vertical blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the polished table, where 5 candidates sat waiting for their security clearance interviews. Maya Torres occupied the last chair, her posture neither slouched nor rigidly military, mid-30s with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail and minimal makeup. She wore a simple grey blazer over a white blouse. Nothing about her demanded attention. Her hands rested calmly on the folder in her lap, and her eyes occasionally scanned the room with a measured awareness that most people wouldn't notice. The other candidates were younger, recent academy graduates with crisp suits and rehearsed confidence. They exchanged whispers about their college achievements and family connections within the military hierarchy. One young man, barely 25, boasted about his father's position as a colonel at the Pentagon. "This is just a formality," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "My dad says these interviews are mostly about checking boxes. As long as you don't say anything stupid, you're in." Lieutenant Derek Vance entered the room with the bearing of someone who had never questioned his own authority. 38 years old, with a squared jaw and perfectly pressed uniform. He carried a stack of files and a tablet. His ribbon spoke of administrative achievements rather than field experience, but he wore them with pride. "Good morning," he said without warmth. "I'm Lieutenant Vance, conducting security clearance reviews for the Joint Task Force position. We'll proceed alphabetically by last name." He called the first candidate, a young woman named Anderson, who followed him into the adjacent interview room. 20 minutes later, she emerged looking relieved. The process continued efficiently. Bennett, Hoffman, Martinez, each returning with expressions ranging from confident to cautiously optimistic. Torres, Lieutenant Vance finally called, checking his watch with visible impatience. Ma stood and followed him into the interview room. It was smaller than she expected, deliberately so. A single table, 3 chairs, recording equipment mounted in the corner, and a one-way mirror that reflected her own composed expression back at her. "Sit," Vance instructed, though he remained standing, a subtle power play. He reviewed her file with exaggerated thoroughness, his frown deepening with each page. "Maya Torres," he read aloud. 34 years old, high school diploma, no college degree. Employment history shows gaps. Long gaps. He looked up sharply. "Care to explain these periods of unemployment?" "Those weren't unemployment," Maya replied evenly. "Those were deployments with restricted documentation." Vance's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Restricted documentation. Convenient." He flipped another page. "You're applying for a position that requires top secret clearance and your resume looks like Swiss cheese, no references from previous employers, no detailed work history, and somehow you think you're qualified for Joint Task Force operations." "My qualifications speak for themselves once the proper clearances are verified," Mia said calmly. "Do they?" Vance leaned forward, placing both palms on the table. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone trying to game the system. Maybe you heard about this position through some friend of a friend. Thought you'd take a shot." Despite being completely unqualified, Maya's expression didn't change. "I assure you, Lieutenant, I'm not gaming anything. Let me be direct, Miss Torres." He emphasized the civilian title deliberately. "This task force requires individuals with verified military experience, advanced training, and impeccable records. What I see here is someone with unexplained absences and vague claims about restricted work. That's not going to cut it." "I understand your skepticism," Maya replied. "However, my service record is classified at a level that requires additional verification protocols." Vance laughed. A sharp dismissive sound. "Classified service record, right? Let me guess. You were Special Forces, CIA, Navy SEAL." His sarcasm was palpable. "I've been conducting these interviews for 6 years. You know how many people claim to have classified backgrounds they can't prove? At least a dozen per cycle. And you know how many actually do? 0. I'm not claiming anything I can't substantiate," Maya said quietly. "The verification process exists for exactly this reason." "The verification process," Vance repeated, mockingly, is not a magic wand for people who can't provide basic employment documentation. He sat down, finally, steepling his fingers. Tell me something concrete. Where did you serve? What unit? What operations? As I mentioned, that information requires proper clearance to discuss, which you conveniently don't have authorization to share with me. The person conducting your security interview. Vance shook his head. This is circular logic, Miss Torres. I can't recommend you for clearance if you won't provide verifiable information, and you won't provide information because you claim it's classified. See the problem? I see that the system has protocols for exactly this situation. Maya countered. My file contains reference codes that can be verified through appropriate channels. Vance glanced at his tablet, scrolling with obvious irritation. Reference codes. Yes, I see them. A string of numbers that could mean anything or nothing. He looked up sharply. What were you really doing during these gaps? Because I'm thinking maybe the truth is less glamorous. Maybe you were dealing with personal issues, health problems, or just couldn't hold down a regular job. Maya's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. The first sign of emotional response. My service was and remains legitimate, Lieutenant. Then prove it, Vance challenged. Give me something concrete, one verifiable detail about your supposed military service. You're asking me to violate operational security protocols. I'm asking you to give me any reason to believe you're not wasting my time. Vance's voice rose. You walk in here with this mysterious act, expecting me to just take your word that you're qualified for one of the most sensitive positions in joint operations. That's not how this works. A knock at the door interrupted the increasingly tense exchange. A young sergeant poked his head in. Lieutenant Vance, sir, Colonel Reeves would like to see you for a moment. Vance's irritation was obvious. I'm conducting an interview. Sergeant. Yes, sir. But the colonel said it's urgent. Something about the reference codes in one of the files. Vance stood abruptly. Wait here, he ordered Maya curtly. Don't touch anything. As he left, Maya remained perfectly still, her breathing controlled and even. Through the one-way mirror, she could see her own reflection. A woman who had learned long ago that patience was often the most powerful response to hostility. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Maya didn't fidget or check her phone. She simply sat, hands folded, eyes occasionally moving to catalogue the room's features, with the efficiency of someone trained to assess environments quickly. When the door finally opened, Lieutenant Vance returned with a notably different demeanor. His confidence had fractured slightly, replaced by confusion and a hint of apprehension. Behind him stood Colonel Marcus Reeves, a silver-haired officer in his late 50s whose weathered face spoke of decades of actual field experience. Miss Torres, Colonel Reeves said, his tone respectful in a way that made Vance's earlier sarcasm seem even more inappropriate. I apologize for the interruption. I've been reviewing your reference codes. Maya stood. Colonel. Lieutenant Vance, Reeves said without looking at the younger officer. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Colonel Reeves set his tablet on the table, his expression grave. Lieutenant, the reference codes in Miss Torres's file require verification through JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. I just confirmed her credentials. Vance's confusion was evident. Sir, the codes didn't match the standard database. Because you were looking in the wrong place, Reeves interrupted. He turned to Maya. Miss Torres, for the record, what unit did you serve with? The room compressed around that question. Maya met his eyes steadily. Night Stalker Detachment, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. The blood drained from Vance's face. Even with his limited field experience, he knew what that meant. The Night Stalkers were the most elite aviation unit in the U.S. military, flying special operations forces into the most dangerous missions on Earth. Their operations were almost entirely classified. You're all? Reeves asked. Flight medic and tactical systems operator. Reeves nodded. The codes indicate you were part of Operation Neptune's Spear support elements. Yes, sir. Preliminary reconnaissance flights. Vance felt the floor shifting beneath Him. Operation Neptune Spear, the mission that killed Osama bin Laden. He had spent 20 minutes interrogating someone who'd been part of one of the most significant military operations in modern history, Lieutenant Reeves said, his tone sharp. Did you verify these codes through proper channels before conducting this interview? I reviewed the file, sir. The codes didn't match the protocols for handling JSOC. Reference codes are in your manual. Reeves cut him off. Those gaps in her employment history, classified deployments. The reference codes exist specifically for personnel like Miss Torres to apply for cleared positions without compromising operational security. Ma spoke quietly. Lieutenant Vance was following standard protocols. Colonel, without context, my file would raise questions. Reeves acknowledged her diplomacy with a nod. Miss Torres is being generous. You should have flagged this for specialized verification. Immediately, he consulted his tablet. 12 years with 160th Sword, 6 combat deployments, Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor device, Purple Heart. Vance looked like he wanted to disappear. The DFC citation mentions a rescue operation saving 7 special operations personnel. Reeves continued, you flew 67 miles on failing systems after taking fire to get them to medical care. Chief Warrant Officer Ramirez was primary pilot, sir. Maya said, I supported on controls. The report notes you took primary control when he became incapacitated and completed the landing. Reeves closed his tablet. Miss Torres, I'm recommending you for the senior operations coordinator role instead. 2 grades higher. Requires extensive field experience. Coordinates directly with active units. Minimal deployment requirements. I'd be honored, Colonel. Reeves turned to Vance. Lieutenant, we'll discuss this interview in detail later. For now, understand this. People who serve in units like the 160th don't seek recognition. When someone with this background walks through that door, they deserve respect, not skepticism. Yes, sir. Vance whispered. Miss Torres, wait in the conference room. I'll have your paperwork ready within the hour. Maya nodded and left with quiet dignity. After the door closed, Reeves faced Vance directly. Do you understand what just happened? I failed to verify the codes, sir. That's the administrative failure. You spent 20 minutes interrogating a decorated combat veteran, questioning her integrity, suggesting she was gaming the system, and she sat there with more grace than you showed conducting the interview. Sir, I had no way of knowing. You had exactly the way of knowing outlined in your manual. Those codes exist for a reason. Reeves picked up Maya's file. You'll write a comprehensive report on handling JSOC reference codes for distribution to all interview personnel. You'll attend additional training on recognizing classified service backgrounds. This is a teaching moment, Lieutenant. Learn from it. Yes, sir. Because the next person with a background like Miss Torres deserves better than what she received today. Maya sat in the main conference room, alone, the other candidates having been released for lunch. A staff sergeant entered carrying classified documents, a woman in her early 40s with a bearing of someone who'd spent significant time in operational environments. Miss Torres, I'm Sergeant First Class Chen. Colonel. Reeves asked me to process your paperwork. She extended her hand. It's an honor to meet you, Maya shook her hand. Just Maya is fine, Sergeant. Chin smiled with respect. Anyone who flew with the Night Stalkers doesn't get to be just anything. She opened her folder. I served with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Did 3 rotations with 160th support elements. We all served, Ma said. Simply. Different roles, same mission. That's gracious, but we both know the Night Stalkers took the hardest missions. Chin pulled out forms. I was on the ground in Kandahar when your unit extracted a Ranger squad pinned down in a valley with no clear LZ. Maya's expression shifted. Kandahar 2012. The valley extraction near the Pakistani border. That's the one. Were you on that? Bird? I was the flight medic. 3 casualties, 1 critical. 10-minute window before enemy reinforcements. Chun set down her pen. You saved Jackson's life. Sergeant First Class Thomas Jackson, the critical casualty. The flight medic kept him alive during a 40-minute flight to the field hospital. Jackson survived. Maya asked, genuine emotion breaking through. Retired last year as a master sergeant. Teaching at Ranger School now, wife and 2 kids. He wouldn't have any of that without you. Maya was quiet, absorbing this in. Operational chaos. She rarely learned long-term outcomes of soldiers she treated under fire. Thank you for telling me that, she said finally. As they worked through paperwork, an older man in civilian clothes entered. Late 60s, weathered with a slight hitch of old injuries in his walk. I'm looking for Maya Torres, he said. Maya stood. That's me. The man studied her face. I'm Richard Blackwood, Delta Force, retired civilian consultant now. He extended his hand. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood. Afghanistan, 2011. Our team was compromised during a high-value target operation. Compound near Jalabad had twice as many hostiles as intel indicated. Our extraction helicopter was hit by RPG and had to abort. We were pinned down for 3 hours. Recognition flickered. The compound near Jalut. Winter operation. That's right. Weather had turned. Snow, high winds. Everything was grounded. Mission. Commander told us to prepare for 6-hour ground extraction. We probably didn't have. Then a woman's voice came over the radio, calm as could be, saying she was inbound in 20 minutes. Maya nodded. Slowly. The wind shear was severe. 3 approaches before we could stabilize the hover. 3 approaches while taking fire, Blackwood added. You held that helicopter steady in impossible conditions. Our entire team made it out. 10 men with families waiting at home. He pulled out a photograph showing a young woman with 2 children. My daughter and her kids. I wasn't supposed to survive that mission, but because your crew didn't quit, I made it home. I walked her down the aisle. I met my grandchildren. 13 more years I shouldn't have had. Maya's composure cracked slightly. That's what we trained for, Mr. Blackwood. I know. And I've spent 13 years wishing I could say thank you. His voice caught. So, thank you from me. From my family, from all the families of the men you brought home. After Blackwood left, Chin pushed the completed forms across the table. You okay? Fine, Maya replied. Though her voice carried weight. You just never know the impact. You do the mission, you move on. You don't usually learn what happens after. That's the nature of special operations, Chin agreed. But the impact is real. For every Blackwood who thanks you, there are dozens more who wish they could. She gathered the forms. Colonel Reeves wants to meet at 1,400 hours to discuss your start date. Until then, you're free. As Chun reached the door, she paused. What you did this morning with Lieutenant Vance, handling that interrogation with patience and professionalism, that took a different kind of courage. You impressed a lot of people. After Chin left, Ma sat alone, processing the unexpected encounters. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unlisted number. Heard you're joining the task force. Welcome. If you need anything, ask for Blackwood RB. She smiled, saved the number, and replied. Thank you. Looking forward to working with you. Colonel Reeves's office overlooked training grounds where soldiers conducted daily drills. Maya entered at precisely 1,400 hours. Thank you for coming, Miss Torres. Reeves gestured to a chair. I want to start with an apology. What happened this morning was unacceptable. Lieutenant Vance failed protocols and his conduct fell short of our standards. He was doing his job as he understood it, Maya replied. That's generous, but it doesn't excuse the failure. Reeves opened a folder. I've reviewed your complete service record, the classified version requiring 2 authorization levels. What I found is remarkable. 12 years with 160th SAW, 6 combat deployments, multiple Valor commendations, including the Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 bronze stars, and a Purple Heart. I was part of exceptional teams, sir. The after-action report from your DFC mission makes difficult reading. Reeves continued. Primary extraction bird damaged, team surrounded with 2 critical wounded. You volunteered despite having flown 11 hours. Made your approach under heavy Fire, maintained hover for 43 seconds to load casualties, then flew 67 miles on. Failing systems after taking machine gun hits. Chief Warrant Officer Ramirez was flying. Maya clarified, I supported controls and managed emergency systems. The report notes, when Ramirez became incapacitated from stress, you took primary control and completed the landing. Reeves set down the report. 2 wounded survived. The team came home. Because you didn't quit. He pulled out another document. This is the senior operations coordinator position. Let me walk you through it. They spent 30 minutes discussing responsibilities, expectations, and operational tempo. Maya asked detailed questions about mission planning, coordination, protocols, and decision-making autonomy. You're thinking like someone who will take ownership immediately, Reeves observed. That's exactly what we need. Can you start Monday? That works well, sir. There's one more thing. Lieutenant Vance. Reeves paused. I had a long conversation with him. He violated protocols and failed to recognize exceptional qualifications. The question is whether you want formal consequences beyond training requirements. Maya considered carefully. I think Lieutenant Vance learned more from this experience than punishment would teach him. He made mistakes trying to protect selection integrity as he understood it. The system corrected itself. I don't see value in destroying his career. You're showing more grace than most would. I've made mistakes, too, sir. I had commanding officers who corrected without ending careers. It made me better. If Lieutenant Vance learns, he'll be better. That serves everyone. All right? Training failure with required education. But he'll write that comprehensive report on JSOC reference codes for distribution across the command. Sergeant Chun entered with credentials. Miss Torres's security clearance is ready, sir. Reeves handed Maya the materials. Welcome to the team. Officially, having someone with your background will elevate everyone's performance. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. 3 months later, Maya stood at the front of a packed conference room pointing to topographical maps on large monitors. The terrain presents significant challenges, she explained to assembled officers and contractors. Limited approach vectors, mountainous surroundings, unpredictable winds. Helicopter crews will need multiple approach assessments before committing. A young officer raised his hand. These conditions seem prohibitive. Should we recommend ground extraction instead? Mass smiled knowingly. Difficult isn't the same as impossible, Lieutenant. The Night Stalkers have flown in worse. Our job is giving them the best intelligence so they can make informed decisions. They don't quit and neither do we. From the back, Colonel Reeves stood with Richard Blackwood, watching. She's transformed that team, Blackwood commented. Everyone defers to her judgment on helicopter operations. She sees things others miss. Experience matters, Reeves replied. Real experience. Earned through actual operations, not just theory. That's what Vance failed to recognize. Lieutenant Vance sat near the front, taking detailed notes. His demeanor had changed significantly. Less arrogant, more thoughtful, genuinely interested in learning from field experience. After the briefing, Vance approached Maya. Excellent presentation. I had a question about the weather patterns. They discussed technical details before. Vance added, I want to thank you again for how you handled my interview situation. Colonel Reeves said you advocated for training rather than punishment. You didn't have to do that. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and improve, Lieutenant. The question is what you do with it. I'm trying to do better. Working through the manual, understanding protocols I should have followed. Paying attention to learning from people with field experience. That's growth, Lieutenant. That matters. As Vance left, Reeves approached. You've made quite an impact, Maya. The team trusts your judgment because they know you've been where they're sending others. That credibility makes all the difference. Just doing the job, sir. Doing it exceptionally well. Jock Commander called this morning. They're tracking mission planning improvements. Since you joined, your name came up. Specifically. Ma smiled slightly. I knew I could contribute. That's all I hoped for. The chance to continue serving meaningfully. Mission accomplished. Reeves paused. I heard you're speaking. At the Special Operations Memorial ceremony next month. Significant honor. Richard Blackwood nominated me. I'm not sure I'm the right person. You're exactly right. That ceremony remembers those who served in silence. You represent that perfectly. Later, Lieutenant Vance sat in his office, reviewing a note he'd kept since his disastrous interview, a list titled, What Real Service Looks Like. He added, credibility comes from experience. Respect is earned through actions. The most qualified people often claim the least. Below that, never forget Maya Torres. Never repeat those mistakes. He closed the note carrying a lesson that would shape his career. That true excellence often comes in unremarkable packages.